WMPG thrives with support from listeners and from Maine Solar Solutions. Maine Solar Solutions, helping empower homeowners and businesses with solar electric solutions for 10 years. Information at mainsolarsolutions.com.
You're listening to WMPG 90.9 Gorham, Portland, Southern Maine Community Radio from USM. Live from the Orion Cygnus arm of the Milky Way galaxy, this is Scientifically Speaking, a weekly half-hour program devoted to elegant curiosities, and I am one of your hosts, Sarah Chang, and joining me, as always, is Bernie Rhyme, DJ Starwatcher. How are you, Bernie?
Yes, hi, Sarah. Very good. Thank you.
Bernie's our professor of the astronomy lab here at USM and our local protector of the night skies. Reach out to us at WMPG Scientifically Speaking at gmail.com or on Twitter at WMPG SciSpeak, and you can head over to WMPG.org to find the last 5 weeks of archives of all of your favorite shows, including this one. Bernie, could you let our listeners know what is up in the night sky for this coming week?
Yes, certainly. So this will be Friday, August 5th. We have a first quarter moon exactly today. It's at 6:08 a.m. to be precise. The first quarter moon rises about noontime and sets about midnight. So it'll be up there. It's actually a pretty good phase to look at. If you stay up late, then it's gone and you can look at other things. The great lineup, of course, has broken up, but you can still see four of the planets, Venus through Saturn, except Saturn now comes up by about 9 o'clock at night. It'll actually be coming up at sunset in another week or so at opposition. And then the Perseids are starting. They don't really peak till the 11th and 12th, but you can see them right from the end of July. So look for some early Perseid meteors from the constellation of Perseus. And then, of course, in the future, we'll talk a lot more, but I'm sure you've heard about the first five images that the James Webb Space Telescope has released. That was back on July 12th. They were doing all kinds of press conferences, and Neil deGrasse Tyson talked about them, and Fraser Cain, and a lot of people that do all these things, and some even had scientists on. But basically, they released a deep field image, way better than Hubble's in much less time. A nebula called the Carina Nebula, and then even the curve of a planet, an exoplanet, with the graph of the water vapor and stuff they found, even though it's just a planet that they couldn't have life as we know, but it has clouds and things like that. And then the Southern Ring Nebula, and then a fifth picture. And there's going to be lots of other pictures that are going to be released. Of course, they even already released a picture of Jupiter in infrared with all kinds of things on Jupiter, including the rings they didn't expect to see in that image. So lots more things coming up, so keep watching that. It's just the beginning of all the things that are going to happen from the web.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just so exciting. It's really exciting. Awesome. Well, thank you, Bernie.
Yeah. Yep.
And if you couldn't take notes fast enough, you can also check out the monthly What's Up column in the Portland Press Herald. Welcome to another episode of Scientifically Speaking. Last time, we talked a little bit about caving and some of the gear that would be needed to start caving safely. And we have with us, Bernie, our guest, our special guest again. If you could do the honors of introducing him again, that'd be great.
Yes, certainly. So we have Peter Gillette with us. We just had him last week, and we had him about a year before that talking about astrophotography. So he's back with us talking about caving and some of the caves he's been exploring and how to do it safely and some adventures he had with other people in caves and so on. So welcome back to another episode, Peter.
Thank you very much. It's good to be with you again.
Yeah.
Long time no see. Long time no hear. Yeah. So as Bernie mentioned last time, we talked about the differences between a spelunker and a caver. We talked about some of the very tight, narrow spaces that you have to go through to reach glory under the ground.
Nirvana.
Nirvana. That's a great way of saying it. And we also talked about your adventures with, was it white nose disease?
Syndrome.
White nose syndrome, with some of the bats here in New England. So thank you for joining again.
My pleasure.
So you would like to talk about some of the caves that you have actually explored. And I know last time I briefly talked about like my experiences not caving, but kind of seeing some of those pathways. And I feel like in my experience, like I've gone to like Mexico, the cenotes, they have like those underwater caves. Mammoth caves are like a big like tourist cave that I've been to. But where do you normally cave? I assume, like we talked about the ones in Vermont. Do you normally just cave here in New England? And do you have any favorite ones?
Well, it's sort of the same as with astronomy. You go where it's easiest to go,
Mm,
and so for me, a lot of my caving is here in Vermont. Um, Much of the caves here in Vermont tend to be smaller
mm,
and tighter than the big caves of the Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia region. They tend to be um, horizontal
mm,
caves as opposed to vertical caves,
mm,
but there are some, and so I have taken on uh, learning how to uh, cave vertically as well as horizontally. Horizontally being crawling, walking, stooping, um, um, fighting my way through pinches and such to go that route. But vertically is often done with extra gear. You
mm,
need a special type of rope. It's not the same as a mountain climbing or a rock climbing rope, um, and special gear to be able to safely go up and down that rope.
mm, mm,
Um, um, I've also been in um, mines, a number of mines, and in fact, a
mm.
lot of the bat survey stuff that I do is actually going into some of the old mines of Vermont,
Oh, I didn't even
and
know there were
that's
old mines. I
oh
guess that
yeah,
would make sense. What
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
mines?
In the case of Vermont, interestingly enough, one of the primary uh, harvested, shall we say, ores was copper.
Oh,
And in fact, some of the earliest copper pennies minted in the United States came from Vermont
that's
copper
cool.
and from the mines that I've been in,
Wow. Is
which
there
is
still any
pretty cool.
left?
You got to go down and get
Yes,
them, right?
I
there
love
have.
copper.
Well, the interesting thing is that the copper harvested in Vermont was um, a copper sulfate,
Okay.
and consequently, it took a fair bit of work to separate the copper back out,
Mm,
and it was environmentally costly.
mm,
If you take sulfur out of a metal,
yeah.
it typically combines with water and becomes sulfuric acid,
Mm,
which becomes a leachate that gets into the groundwater, and we're still dealing with that. And the,
mm,
the mines are now 100 years old and more.
yeah.
So
Mm,
yeah, we've got some super fun sites because of it.
Hmm.
But
wow. So
um,
does it burn your eyes when you get down there?
it does not. There's a bit of a sulfurous odor,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but not overwhelming. I mean, if you've been to a place like Yellowstone
Mm-hmm.
and noted the sulfur, the hydrogen sulfide smell there, it's nowhere near as intense
Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
as that.
yeah.
But interestingly, the copper pyrite, as it was called, which is actually an iron copper sulfur compound, um, um, reacts with oxygen, um, and will heat up, and is uh, has been known to cause fires in the ore carts that were being hauled
Oh, wow.
from a mine to a processing plant
Hmm.
in the 1910s, 1800s, 1900s early, when they were being drawn by horse cart and or drawn by horses, and the wind would start blowing through the ore, the
Oh, wow.
rocks that were being hauled, and they would start to heat up and literally catch the carts on fire.
But
Hmm.
this wouldn't happen in the mine?
No, apparently not. I mean, the
Interesting.
surfaces oxidize over, seal over, much like
Yeah.
iron rusts and sort of seals itself in
Yeah.
the process.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, the mines were primarily copper, although talc was another commodity that
Wow.
was harvested for
Very
quite some
cool.
time. Yeah, Yeah.
So do you have a specific cave that has high replay value, if you will, for yourself? Or do you kind of go
Oh,
to different ones all the time?
um, well, there are the popular, the more popular caves in Vermont. Some of the largest, longest caves in Vermont. Some of them have a vertical component that definitely should stop some people from exploring them.
Should.
I say should
Doesn't.
because I got involved in a rescue
Oh,
when two spelunkers
Not prepared.
went into a vertical cave in Vermont, and they had to down climb a vertical wall about 45 feet
Mm.
within the cave, and they safely made it to the bottom of the climb, explored around a very wet, muddy cave for I don't know how long,
yeah.
but it's a cave that beats you up.
Mm,
You get really tired doing this cave,
mm.
and when they went to climb back out, the first person who had much experience in doing this, even though he shouldn't have, free climbed his way back up and was showing the second guy how to do it, and the second guy didn't make it. He got
Mm.
about halfway up and he peeled off the wall,
Oh,
dropped, landed on a very large rock that's at the bottom,
oof.
and ankle injury, knee injury, potential back and neck injury, and it became about a 20-hour rescue
Mm.
Oof.
with Vermont Cavers rescue group getting called out to handle it, guide it,
Mm,
make it
mm.
happen, and yeah, again a case of spelunking not being a good idea. But yeah, so there are vertical caves, there are horizontal caves, there are solutional caves, caves
Mhm.
made by water. Some caves made by water, the water is actively flowing through rock that is somewhat soluble and creates a different kind of cave than a cave that's formed by water that's just sort of sitting in a pocket in a pool and causes the rock to just kind of rot away.
Mm,
There are also caves that are formed just um, by glacial rebound, by tectonics.
mm.
The movement of the rock can either cause a large piece of rock to slab off the side of a mountain and then land and create a void in the space between mountain and slab. There are, of course, lava tube caves
Oh,
made by by the flow of lava.
oh, that's cool.
Oh yeah, and
It's like tunneled through.
yeah. If you picture a large lava field, right, a large area of flow, oftentimes you see the lava on the surface cools off and hardens up, but the lava is still flowing underneath. And if the source of that lava sort of dries up, the flow tends to diminish, drop, and a tube remains,
Wow,
and they're pretty amazing.
that's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. There
That's
are
cool.
also caves in glaciers, ice caves,
Yep,
real ice caves,
yep.
which are quite dangerous. I don't recommend them. Between the fact that it's ice and consequently can fracture and fail without really any prediction, and the fact that they're extremely cold and extremely wet, it's just a bad combination.
Mm.
Do you usually kind of cave until the end of the cave? Like when does it stop for you, or is it? I imagine some systems are kind of on and on and on forever, but do you usually have an endpoint?
It really varies. It
Mm,
varies so much. There are caves that I've worked on, dug in to try and extend,
Mm.
that start off looking like this goes maybe 30 feet into a hillside or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and with a fair bit of work, gets extended to where it connects between two different caves
Mm.
or more, becomes a cave system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, there are other cave systems that are just so extensive that really you can't do the whole thing in a reasonable amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Or there are other caves where there are other challenges like water. Some caves
Mm.
actually um, capture enough water in a place to where they what it's called sumps,
Huh.
where the water accumulates to where it completely closes off the passageway with water. And yet there's still a passageway there, and without the right gear, you have no business trying
Yeah.
to go beyond. I did one, and I it's it gave me, let's put it this way, it gave me a whole new appreciation um, of the uh, experience of baptism. And I'm serious, actually. If you didn't know how to swim and you were afraid that there were crocodiles in that river that could come and snatch you and take you down, and someone said, in order for you to, pass this whatever test or whatever, you've got to come into the water with me and let me submerge you in that water, and you will be a better person for it. I understand that a little better now, because I was in one cave that was very cold and wet, and we decided to take a different route out, which I was told involved a duck under. And I thought they meant just duck under a low spot in the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
This was weighed out. Your core temperature is already really low. You're
Mm.
cold, you're wet, you're tired. And someone says, okay, this room has a lake in it. You need to wade out to the center of that lake, and see that rock over on the far side sticking out of the water. Go over to the back side of that rock, and you'll see the ceiling come down to the water's edge. Feel around underwater, and you'll find a hole. Take 3 deep breaths, pull yourself down into that hole, and push yourself through and come out on the other side.
Wow.
Mm.
It becomes you get this feeling of, okay, either I do that or I just sit here and die. Yeah. So I did it. And it's very intense.
Yeah.
Very intense.
I bet.
Yeah, mixing water with caving is not something I generally am in favor of doing.
I was gonna ask, have you ever done like underwater caves at all? But it sounds like you're not into the water in the caves.
Well, years ago I lived in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
and there are a lot of underwater caves
Mm-hmm.
in Florida. And I was, at the time, high school, um, very excited about getting into scuba diving,
Mm-hmm.
and found an instructor after doing a lot of the early studying on my own, but without tanks. Um, it was a tankless job. Never mind.
Yeah.
Uh, this instructor was
Well, that's
willing
slow
to,
clapping
yeah,
there.
absolutely, was willing to take me on as a student, but he would never put on the tanks himself. He was a fully certified cave diver in
Wow.
Florida, and his best friend and diving partner went to explore a different hole in the ground, a sinkhole down there. Just wanted to basically drop into the water and do a little look around on his own before getting anyone else involved.
Never
He
came
didn't.
back?
He didn't make it.
Oh
He
no.
got down in there, and it looks like early on he bumped his head on a stalactite in the water.
Oh,
It knocked out his light,
Mm.
and he wasn't on a string, on a dive line,
Mm.
and the way they figure it, he lost it. He bumped into something without his light, and it displaced his mask,
Mm.
and perhaps snagged his respirator, his mouthpiece, yanked it out of his mouth, and he couldn't get it back. They found him. His buddy, my instructor, was on the recovery team that went in and found him and found that his tank was still virtually full.
wow.
And he said, "I'll never do another cave dive. Never put on
Wow.
another tank. Just not willing to push that envelope again."
Mm.
Mm.
But he was willing to teach me.
So did you ever get to try it or
Cave diving?
yeah.
The closest I ever came was, well, my short answer is no,
Mm.
and chose to never go that
Mm.
route myself.
Yeah.
Partly because of his experience,
Right. Right.
but did end up in a cenote.
Nice.
Yeah, down in the Yucatan,
Nice.
and snorkeled around there and realized, even though there were divers below me, I watched them go down.
Yeah.
I was very, very cautious about just how far into it I would explore,
Yeah.
making sure that I always had an air pocket above,
Yeah.
and realized it's far too easy to get disoriented and
Yeah.
go the wrong way, and no, not gonna do that.
Yeah.
So
Oh, it's
no.
so beautiful, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely remarkable, amazing, and I love watching some of the YouTubes of some of the places that people are going. You know, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but no, not a direction for me.
Have I feel like this may or may not be a stupid question, but have you ever found like fossils or anything like that in a cave system?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of caves are made of limestone.
Mm.
All the solutional based caves typically are limestone bedrock, and a lot of limestone has fossils in it.
Mm.
Fossils and deposits of chert, which is a form of flint,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah. So I've seen certainly fossils in the walls and such, for sure. As far as bones, yeah, I've found bones in caves, typically animal bones. Thank you, just the
Okay.
same. But, yeah,
I was
yeah,
about to ask, like, have
yeah.
you?
No, and in fact, I should just say that one of the caves that I found in the first evening of digging in this cave that I found with a dear buddy of mine. Um, um, we got into this narrow, thin passageway, and we're following it, digging our way through dirt and porky dung to see where this went. And I found a little piece of metal way back in this cave, and I said, "Oh, what's that?" And he didn't know, so we just sort of pushed it up onto a shoulder of the cave route that we were on, and proceeded to discover what I think may well be the best decorated cave in northern Vermont.
Hmm.
And on the way back out of there, my brain had just in the back of my head was working around, what was that piece of metal? And I suddenly realized it was, if you've ever seen a leg hold trap, leg hold traps typically have these two jaws that do this to
Oh,
grab the leg of the
yeah,
hapless,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And in order for those jaws to snap shut, there are a pair of springs
Mm-hmm.
that hold that wait for the trigger to be tripped,
Mm-hmm.
and then they go up and cause the
Mm-hmm.
jaws to snap.
Mm-hmm.
So these things are called trap springs. That's what I found, was a trap spring.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I decided that that was a wonderful name for the cave. Trap Spring Cave, because frequently caves are named for the springs of water that flow out of them. But
Very clever.
thank you very much. So Trap Spring Cave is near and dear to my heart,
Wow.
and absolutely beautiful inside. The flowstone is almost 30 feet high in there. A wall of cascading ribbons coming down, and another area with soda straws, which are these thin, delicate white formations that hang down like
Wow.
full-blown stalactites.
Yeah.
Pendants coming down from the ceiling. Just remarkable stuff. Really
That's
wonderful.
awesome.
Yeah. So if I have a favorite, that's probably it.
Trap
Spring.
Trap Spring.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, if you find anything in a cave, are you allowed to take it out, or?
Oh, well, I don't know. If it's porky dung, I don't think anyone would have a problem.
No, I mean something valuable or anything. You can't damage any of the stalactites or anything, right? Or
Absolutely correct. I mean, well, am I physically capable of it? Yeah, absolutely. Do I try very, very, very hard to never ever? Absolutely.
What would you do with it, though?
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. Why would you?
yeah.
I don't know, but people do because they're there.
I
You know?
imagine there's like probably some crystals, maybe.
yeah.
Interesting.
You know, really, there aren't that many crystals
Oh,
in
really?
most caves.
Mm.
Now, there are exceptions to that.
Yeah, in Mexico.
In Mexico,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, the selenite cave that was found during a mining process down there is surely a crystalline exception.
Yeah.
And there are some caves in Vermont. One I can think of in particular. It's closed. No, don't go there. But it is a small solutional cave system that has quite a few quartz crystals in it.
Wow.
How that worked out, I don't know. Yeah. And in fact, actually, it's closed now because so many people have gotten in there and hammered and chiseled and shoveled and whatever, stripped it out. So there's really not a whole lot left to it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Peter, we're here at our 30-minute mark.
Again.
Do you have any kind of final closing words for our listeners who are now hopefully inspired by your caving?
I hope they are. It's just another wonderful source of adventure. If you're up for it, just make sure that you're properly prepared. Just like boating, there are things you can do to make it a very wonderful, safe, fun experience. And there are things you can do that make it turn into a nightmare. And why would you want it?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Peter, for joining us.
It's been a pleasure, as
We
always.
love having you on.
I hope to find an excuse for another visit.
Absolutely.
Great.
You have been listening to Scientifically Speaking here on WMPG with myself, Bernie, and Peter Gillette. Stay tuned for Something for the Weekend with Anella, and from your favorite nerds, stop spelunking and start caving.
Amen.